guy named Marin Katusa. It's like K-A-T-U-S-A. Cat USA, Katusa. The guy lives in Vancouver somewhere, I think. He wrote, it's a pretty good book. I'm almost through it now. And my brother was reading it and recommended I have a look at it. It's actually a very intriguing book about recent world affairs and geopolitics, you might call it. And it smacks big time of tribalism, as all of these sort of historical perspectives of the way human beings want to fight against each other for basically control of, you know, dirt and snow and sky and water and oil and stuff like that. And of course people, labor, right? That's the real value that there is in money. And it was there was once I was reading through this. Well, first of all, just to not to be much of a spoiler, but it's basically a lot about Putin, Vladimir Putin, and how he's, you know, as ruthless as he is. You know, the history of him rising to power, and his vision of making Russia an energy superpower in oil and gas, uranium in particular, where the rest of the world isn't so much. He's, you know, doesn't give a damn about the whole green fallacy, I guess you'd say. He's just going ahead and producing what people really want, which is energy. In a very ruthless way, I must say. I mean, he just, you know, steamrolls anybody who gets in his way. And so he's protecting his tribe, which is mostly his pocketbook, but his close associates, and then a periphery out there called his Russian tribe, right? Then of course his nemesis is America, what he calls America, or the United States, who's headed by, right now, a very delusional man called Barack Obama, who's, you know, equally a tyrant, but doesn't seem to know what he's doing, whereas Putin seems to. And the whole thing just smacks of tribalism, you know. There's like, forget about us as human beings, men and women. It's all about Russians and Americans and Germans, and there's all these, it's like language through adjectives, you know, or euphemisms, or for personalities and persons. And a lot of people die. I mean, the last century, an estimated 20 million people were directly killed in conflicts by, nobody calls it tribalism, but what it is, it's us against them, you know, and the butchery of war. And this thing's heating up. This is just interesting to see what's going on. It's a perspective of the human development and where we are in this whole tribalism. I would certainly wish we could lose it. We're better off, I think, in terms of our quality of life. But we can individually lose it. We can lose it. We don't. It's not as though we would lose it in terms of ignoring it, because, you know, tyrants like Obama and Putin are very real. But we can lose it in terms of our concept. We can lose the religion of it, because it really is a religion. I would say certainly it is a religion. I mean, the gods just have different names. That's all. I mean, you know, in the English sense, you know, Queen Elizabeth actually refers to God as God. You know, in America, the God is we the people, or the public. In Russia, it's the Mother Russia, or it's governed over by a priestly class. I mean, every time you see Putin at any official event, there's all these strange hatted priests, bishops, and so on in the background. Of course, they're the representation of God, right? It's all theocracy. The whole thing is theocracy. We think that, you know, we speak the words of separation of church and state, but there is no such thing as separation of church and state, because tribalism depends on it. There has to be this mythology that there's our God is better than your God, or our God is the correct God, you know, our God is the democratic God, and your God is the totalitarian God, or whatever it is. But it's all just, you know, the old saying, you know, the first path to wisdom is calling things by their real name. It's tribalism. It's all it is. And of course that all starts in the family. That's for another story. But I wanted to, and these are just my comments. I mean, you can chime in and see what you think, and see what we can do about this in terms of a conversation, right? Now, I was recently reading a little book, part of a book anyways, about the Hutterites, and there's a good example of extreme tribalism, where I didn't realize this, even among different schisms within Hutteritism. I mean, there'll be a Hutterite colony here, a Hutterite colony over there. They won't talk to each other because, I forget what they call them, lates or lairds or something. There's different versions of the Hutterite faith, such that they won't intermarry, or traditionally they wouldn't talk to each other. Some will, some won't. And they're very closed, and they have been for very long, and they're very, very religious. I mean, they're talking, you know, Catholicism on steroids, like my dad's version of it. You know, church every day, 2 times on Sunday. You know, the schooling is largely biblical instruction and memorization of the Bible. I mean, it's very, very much religiosity, which is the essence of a tribe. Because, I mean, if the tribe didn't have any validity, you know, the tribe has to be such that we're right and those guys over there are wrong, mixed with a bunch of brutality, which is, you know, serious ostracism, serious recriminations for going against the tribe, you know. And in the back of this book there was a section there about trying to dispel fallacies about the Hutterites, such as issues of inbreeding and this sort of thing. But one I thought was interesting was one of the questions that he says, the guy who's a Hutterite, who's writing this, the idea that, you know, Hutterite, this tribalism is similar to communism, which, you know, that's the case with all tribes. It all descends to the communist approach, because communism is exactly the opposite of individualism, right? Whenever you have a greater good or a social contract or any of these sort of made-up concepts, you have a form of communism, and that's what, and he admits that it is a form of communism. But the difference is, he says that it's voluntary. You know, voluntary. Are you kidding me? I mean, anybody in a Hutterite colony, well, first of all, if you're in any tribe, including a thing like a Hutterite colony, or, you know, the Russian army, or, you know, one of Putin's inner circles, or whatever it is, or an adversary, if you go against the dictates of the priestly class, which nowadays in many social circles are called politicians, or judges and these sorts of people, they're all priestly classes now, because there is no separation of church and state, it's all theocracy. You are admonished, you are seriously punished, you can be, you know, in some cases even killed, depending how hard you go against it. And I would say, you know, him saying that Hutterite colony is voluntary, I mean, the violence that is put against children, you know, one of the jobs of the German teacher in a Hutterite colony, according to his admission, is punishing children. I mean, they have the belief that, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child. That means you must discipline by hitting children. And that's actually that's a job description, basically, of one of the members of the colony, including the parents. So this isn't voluntary. I mean, if it was voluntary, the kid would say, hang on a second here, I didn't sign up for this beating today. You know, that's not voluntary. That's enforced violence on people. Now you can say it's voluntary, perhaps, when you're an adult, because you can escape. But then there's serious repercussions, right? There's serious punishment, which is that you're probably not allowed to see your family, people you got along with, this sort of thing. So it's not voluntary in the sense of any organization that an adult would choose to join, like the dance club or the Toastmasters club or any sort of voluntary affiliation. It's not that at all. It's in serious indoctrination. So people's minds are so warped by the time they're adults, for the most part, they're inculcated, right? Now, another one I wanted to talk about was how the cult of politics of the Polish cult, you might call it, which I got to thinking that the word Polish, in terms of the nationality, it might come from this, I don't know, but you have the polling station, right? The polling station relates to politics. Politics relates to policy men, policy women, which we call police now, who impose policies upon people who didn't overtly agree to them. But and of course the polling station is the referendum that you belong to the Polish religion of policy for that particular area. And it really creates a boundary of words, as one guy on YouTube once said, that there's boundaries, national boundaries and so on are really just, unless there's a physical wall there, but that's just a wall. Once again, it's not anything inherent on the earth. It's just a wall that somebody constructed, some people constructed. But generally speaking, they're just, you get to a boundary, unless there's an actual road there, there's nothing. There's just, grass here and grass over there, earthworms here, earthworms there. But what there is there's a wall of words. Somebody said something at one point, a bunch of people did, and they agreed to it. It's like a god, right? A bunch of people said it, a bunch of people agreed to it. So that's where it is. It's a boundary of words. And I was living for a while, this reminds me rather, I was living for a while up in a very remote area on the western coast, northwestern coast of North America. And that area, most people believed was a place called British Columbia. And so the news and the local radios and all that, they're all talking about most of the stuff to do with Vancouver, which is like 17-hour drive away. Meanwhile, there are towns in another mythical place called Alaska, which are just, a few, half an hour by the crow flies or whatever away, but you never hear anything about it. Because that's another tribe, you see. And even though they're geographically very close, there's hardly a peep in any of the news media, because the news media is just, once again, it's the propaganda arm of the Polish of the policy religion, the Polish religion, I'm calling it here, sort of in jest a way, but really in reality that's what it is, right? It's a boundary that some people have drawn down, and they say inside this boundary these policies apply. Over in that boundary over there, that's nothing to do with us. That's the other tribe. They'll have their own policies, right? So once again, it's not that we have to just ignore these policies, because we do that at our peril, but just to wake up to what's actually going on and to spread the word about what's going on. That people are just deluded in their religions, but they believe that they don't have religion anymore. They just exchange their religion from one to another. At one time you had overt priestly classes, and then their enforcers, called the policy men. But now it's just all morphed into one. It's all morphed into one. And of course, in a monarchy situation, it's never changed, because in a place in a Polish religion called Canada, you have a monarchy, and the Queen, for example, her coronation oath is done inside of a church. It's a religious agreement with God. It's like a covenant with God to uphold the laws that her subjects, including her servant class of subjects like policy men and judges and lawyers and politicians and whatnot, come up with. They got to be in accordance with that overall agreement that she made with God, of course, which is just a fabrication, and to make sure that they're enforced and everybody abides by them. But if it all comes from the top. In any structure, in any corporate structure, there's always the top and the down, right? Well, the top of the pile is this queen, and
her authority, she says, comes from God. So I have yet to have anybody be able to explain to me how this is not a theocracy. That's entirely what it is. But the difference is that nobody wants to admit it, and nobody will. Nobody believes it. They think that they have a secular, some kind of a, they call it secular, some sort of a separation of church and state, where they don't. It's completely intermeshed. It's just, the only difference is that they're unaware of it. But their authority is directly ascended from this concept of God, through the king or queen, and then through the policy makers, who are given that right to create policy by the divine right of the king, and then they're enforced upon the people by the policy men. That's how it works. And I would hope that eventually we will lose this insane sense of tribalism, because after all, just waking up to it will surely help to improve the quality of our life experience. It just looks like taking the blinders off, that's all. Wonderful. I just arrived at work. I gotta turn this off. Nice talking again. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.